Halo needs a reboot. I know I'm in the extremely small minority in saying this, but trust me, if you listen to my reasoning, I think you'll understand where I'm coming from, if not agree with me in the end. Halo needs a reboot. Not a hard reboot, but a reboot nonetheless. Look at the state of Halo currently. Not from a gameplay or player count or multiplayer standpoint, but strictly from a narrative one. Let's break down what 343 has done so far. Master Chief wakes up on the drifting forward unto dawn as it arrives at Requiem. He accidentally unleashes the Prometheans and the Didact, who wants to kill all of humanity, all the while Cortana is losing it due to rampancy. Chief kills the Didact, but not really, but yes really, but not really, and Cortana dies. Then Cortana comes back. Chief wants to save her, but isn't allowed to, so he defies orders. Because of this, the Office of Naval Intelligence starts an anti-Chief campaign and sways public opinion on him, but then changes their minds, but not really, but yes really, but not really. Fireteam Osiris is then sent after Chief as Cortana starts to activate giant Forerunner constructs known as Guardians to establish control over the galaxy. Cortana then becomes an evil space dictator and actually does take over the galaxy with an evil army of AI by her side, totally off screen. Then she's defeated, off screen, and the Banished pop up, off screen, and basically beat the UNSC, off screen. And after they find a special Halo ring, kick Chief's ass. On this special Halo ring, they find a species known as the Endless, who just so happen to be impervious to a fucking Halo ring and are apparently worse than the Flood. And now, the actual Flood may be coming back, but not really, but yes really. See what I mean? The story is an absolute mess. For 2, and most likely 3 games in a row, they set up a threat and then swiftly ignore it for the next. There are so many loose and forgotten story threads that either go nowhere, are going nowhere, make no sense, are just cashing in on nostalgia, or are resolved off-screen in one of the 30-plus Halo books. This disconnected and dysfunctional nature of the Halo story has resulted in mass fan backlash and a fractured fan base. Essentially, after the release of Halo 5, the fans of Halo have never been the same. Long-term fans and new fans and everything in between constantly are at odds with one another. Some want a return to form with the Bungie games, some want an evolution of the formula with the 343 games, and some want a little bit of both, but everyone just wants good Halo games. The main argument against a Halo reboot is simply that if a reboot were to take place, it would erase 343's games and Bungie's games. You know, the really good Halo games. But here's the thing, during 343's tenure as the Halo publisher, they've done so much to retcon Bungie's original story that their games are basically set in an alternate universe already. Case in point, and arguably the absolute biggest retcon, is the Forerunners. In Bungie's story, it is heavily implied that humans were descendants of the Forerunners meant to quote-unquote reclaim their lost technology. Halo 2's original ending stated this, Halo 3's ending directly stated this, and the book Contact Harvest made it abundantly clear that the whole Human Covenant War started because the prophets discovered that humans were living Forerunners. And if that information were to ever get out, then it would demolish their whole religion and usurp their power. That was why the Covenant attacked humanity. That was Bungie's canon. But in 343 games and books, the Forerunners were made into a completely different race. In fact, there's a whole Forerunner series of books that further retcons the species individually, as the Didact, who appeared in Halo 3's terminals as a singular individual, is now divided into 2 separate people, that being the Isodidact and the Didact, with the Didact being the antagonist of Halo 4. The way I currently view Halo is basically 2 different universes. Piggybacking off of the naming scheme of that horrendous show, let's call these the Gold and the Bronze timelines. The Bungie timeline, or the Gold timeline, is Reach through Halo 3, where the Forerunners are ancient humans, and the story ends with Chief adrift through space. The 343 timeline, or the Bronze timeline, is Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary through Halo Infinite, where the Forerunners are a separate species, and Chief is currently on Zeta Halo, and his status is currently up in the air. In my mind, Bungie's story ended at 3 and hasn't continued since. The Gold timeline starts with Noble Team on Reach and ends with Chief drifting through space, where he still hasn't been saved yet, forever waiting for the day humanity will need him again. Halo 4 is the start of a new timeline, a quote-unquote fracture, so to speak, where Chief lands on Requiem and we get the events we're currently experiencing. The Bronze timeline starts the same, yet continues past where the Gold timeline ends, while also changing the Forerunner lore. 2 timelines, 2 stories, so why restart and make a 3rd? A while back, I made a video talking about narrative de-escalation, where I discussed this trend that many writers are constantly falling into, that being narrative escalation. I define this concept of narrative de-escalation as the story you tell after the big narrative climax. Basically, what happens after the big crescendo. Well, in Halo's case, and the MCU, and Star Wars, and probably a dozen or more franchises, it's undermining the prior threat. Halo 3 ends as Chief and the Arbiter defeat the Covenant, prevent the firing of the Halo rings, and stop the Flood. The massive universe-ending threats have all been put to rest, and the species of the Milky Way are able to pick up the pieces and rebuild. That is the conclusion to Halo. But after that perfect narrative climax, you then have the Diadact, who wants to kill all of humanity, then Cortana, who wants to conquer the universe, and now the Endless, who are worse than the Flood and are Halo-proof. Halo already blew its universe-ending load and then did it again 3 more times, each time making its impact all the worse. When every threat is a universe-ending threat, then those threats start to feel pointless, and Halo is starting to feel pointless. If Halo, for the 3rd time in a row, waves away the plot they set up, then that, to me, would be the bigger nail in the coffin than soft rebooting the franchise. If 343 waves away the Endless in favor of the Flood, then I will truly believe Halo is dead. That is narrative backpedaling 101. It's, oh shit, the new stuff is kind of awful, well hey, look at this thing you used to love. Nostalgia sells, and they know that, and that's why we're going to start seeing a lot more of classic Halo coming back. We just got a Flood Armor Core, a short Flood audiobook, the classic Mark V, the classic Mark IV, a short Omega Team audiobook, and fans are cheering, yes, this is what we want, this is Halo, but no, it's just nostalgia. Nothing new is happening, it's backpedaling. Halo needs to go forward, not backward. And you may say, well, isn't a reboot going backward too? Yes and no. Yes, it's going backward, but it's resetting the status quo in a new and fresh way. If, and that's a massive if it's done right. So that begs the question, how does one reboot correctly? Look no further than Resident Evil. While Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 are technically remakes, not reboots, they do something quite interesting. They take those classic games, update them from a graphical and mechanical standpoint, and maintain the feeling and story from the original games, all the while adding worthwhile additions that cater to new and old players. These new Resident Evil games are not a one-for-one remake. They take liberties and update the formula, and it actually worked. So why not take that Resident Evil formula one step forward and essentially make a remake boot? Start Halo back at Combat Evolved, call it Halo 1, and follow the original story, all the while updating it from a graphical and mechanical standpoint, maintaining the feel and story from the original game, all the while adding worthwhile additions that cater to new and old players. Basically take what works from modern Halo games and implement them into this remake boot, as well as re-implement cut content. Halo is notorious for its plethora of cut content, so why not finally make use of it? For this metaphorical Halo 1 game, add back the engineers, the blind wolves, and the Sharkoi. Throw in weapons seen in future games like the battle rifle, SMG, or carbine. Create larger mission spaces that play like small open worlds. Think Infinite, but on a smaller scale that changes per mission and adds back cut missions, like the Prophet assassination mission. But instead of a Prophet, it could be a botched assassination attempt on Thel Vidam, setting up the future Arbiter in Halo 2. Or add the return to Alpha Base and make a small hub world of sorts. But it could go deeper than just adding back cut content. Adding a new narrative element to pre-existing missions could also feed into the new story about to be told, and that new story could still pay homage to the original story while adding a handful of new elements, such as giving Halo 2 a 3rd act, giving Halo 3 a new intro, or even starting Halo 1 off with a mission on Reach. It'll be the same story for the most part, but by taking inspiration from the Resident Evil remakes, we'll inject some new content into these 2-decade-old games. But why? Why change these things? Why restart? Why not just pick up after Halo 3 and restart from there? Why remake boot the entire series? Because Halo has lost its way. It's not the juggernaut cash cow it once was. It's a shell and honestly a really niche game by today's standards. Us, long-term Halo fans, are a dying breed. If Halo is going to restart and wipe away any games, it has to go all in. Rebooting it to a point after Halo 3 will only cater to old fans who know the story. This is supposed to rejuvenate the franchise, so you have to cater to everyone and go full in on a reset. This is supposed to rejuvenate the franchise, so you have to cater to everyone, and a full restart is the only way. Do I really want this? No, I'd love for Halo to be simple and follow one series of games, but after what 343 has done to the franchise, they've written themselves into a horrible narrative corner, where if they go back on the Flood, it will feel like nostalgia bait. If they continue with the Endless, it will undermine the prior threats. And if they take the story in a new direction for the third time, it'll feel more pointless than ever before. For far too long, Halo has had too many cooks in the kitchen, as well as corporate meddling that resulted in the story being so overly convoluted that this is really the only positive way forward. That, yes, will piss off fans initially, but will be better for the fandom in the long run. The key to Halo's future is simplicity, not complexity. Get rid of it all. Start over. Work with what we know is good. Make a remake boot of Halo 1, 2, and 3, and once getting back to 3, course correct the franchise from there. Don't undermine the prior threat, complement it. And you may ask, what's the story you tell after 3? It's incredibly simple. Make it small scale and make it personal. What is Master Chief? A weapon. So what happens when you have a weapon built for universe-ending threats in a universe where none exist? How does one re-enter this new world? Halo 4 and 5 very briefly touched on this concept, but in my opinion, they should have just gone all in on it. Man versus Machine is the next story arc you tell in Chief's story. You had the very narrative-driven story from Halo 1, 2, and 3, so now you tell a very character-driven for Halo 4, 5, and 6. Halo needs to learn from the mistakes of the past. A reboot doesn't mean wiping away everything we all know and love. It means a fresh start. It means returning things to the status quo and evolving the fractured franchise from there. Don't go backwards, don't rely on nostalgia, and don't undermine.